I'm so excited for this podcast. I think it's been about a year and a half since we last had Ben on from Morphogen. So welcome to the PricePlow podcast. I'm Ben, and obviously our guest today is Ben Hartman from Morphogen Nutrition. We also have Mike Roberto here, also a founder of PricePlow. So we're really excited to dive in. Ben, I know we already kind of met a year and a half ago, but I think both of our platforms have grown a decent amount in that time. Yeah. So I want to get back and again talk about your story, because you have an awesome story of where Morphogen came from. So if you could just give us the rundown before we start the podcast, that'd be really cool.
Yeah. And it's February 10th, 2022. Got it.
Okay, rundown of, oh God, that's a lot. Where we came from, how we started. So basically, I mean, it was probably 15 years ago now. I was sponsored by a pretty large, I mean, one of like the global elite companies that are, still a powerhouse in the industry today. And back in that day, there wasn't any social media, there wasn't any sponsorships or affiliates, or how we know them today. It was, you're an athlete, you work for this team, you do the trade shows, you contribute to the website, you do all this kind of stuff. So I was with them, and I had, extensive history and background academically and professionally with really in-depth sciences, exercise, physiology, nutrition, all the way through the master's level. I mean, took every sort of science course, physiology course, anatomy course you could ever take, and knew that I was destined to do something different than the career that I was in. And I was also very frustrated with the way that things were going with this company in terms of product development and what I was kind of being forced to promote. And kind of a collective frustration between of all that, I was just like, you know what, fuck this, I'm going to do my own thing. I was like, why, very famously, why can't everybody just make something that has everything you need in one scoop? Because at the time, it was like multi-scooping or buying some, several extra raw materials to throw in. And I'm going, this is stupid. Why? And I go, oh, I understand the game now, because the game is margin distribution, and there's only so far that you can stretch those. And I said, what if I just made something awesome and it cost me 5 times as much to make, but I sold it to people for around the same amount of money. All the margin came back to me. I don't need to sell hundreds of thousands of units at a $5 markup to make any money. I don't need to have sales reps and any industry pressure or any of this kind of stuff. And I'll just get people the stuff that I believe in. And if it fails, then at least I have 5 years worth of pre-workout to use for myself, And so I basically came home from work super frustrated, took 2 days off, came up with pretty much everything in the entire company, completely changed the course of our life, came to my wife at the end of those 2 days and said, hey, I'm going to start a supplement company. I have no idea what I'm doing with business. I need all of our savings. She goes, okay, I trust you.
Ride or die. Awesome.
Ride or die. And, fast forward 10 years later, we scaled a tremendous amount, far bigger than I ever thought. We become something far bigger than I ever could have dreamed of in terms of not just, what we're producing and what we have, access to, but sort of this greater impact and this legacy that we can leave behind, whether it's on this industry or to my children or to our community. And it's been a fucking hell of a ride.
Nice. The model seems to work. Can you describe to us your demographic, the users? It's clearly the users who want some pretty insane stuff.
Yeah. So we've always kind of talked about our customer base as people that kind of give a shit or give more of a shit. Right. Mm-hmm. So these are not people that, and maybe traditionally some of them may have wandered into, a chain store or a mom and pop shop or something, have been swayed to purchase something that may or may not have been in their best interest due to a kickback or honestly just a profit margin or a marketing gimmick or something. So for the most part, our people find us either out of frustration, being disappointed with the expectations not being met with finding something else, or they're kind of further along in that self-education journey, and they know specifically what they're looking for in terms of, optimization of whatever that product is supposed to do. I've always been kind of full ass or no ass, but you're not half-assing anything. And so in terms of product development, for me, I'm always like, what could go in here? And can it be made? Can it be monetized? Can it be flavored? And then does it make logical sense? And so just for me personally, I've always kind of pushed that envelope of what that individual product could represent for my use. And I always believed that if I was able to just kind of talk about that with people and tell them how I came to that conclusion, that some of them would kind of believe that, that same, logic minded thought process, and they'd be in, now they're not going to be swayed by a marketing thing or a BOGO or an athlete or anything from another company, and they're going to stick around and they're going to tell 100 people. And out of those 100 people, one of those people are going to think the same way and they're going to stick around. And slowly we've just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, I think one of the really cool things that I stick to with Morphogen is that, Ben, you understand the thought process between all these other brands, the BOGOs, the marketing, the distribution, and in the face of all of that, you really primarily care about legacy and quality. I think my favorite thing that I've seen you post is, I think it's the Morpho Prime and your father with your story. The story with your father. All of this stuff always comes back to a personal member of yours, like someone in your circle that things mean something to you, and Mike and I are very morally, ethically driven when it comes to talking about supplements, and that always kind of stuck with me. A lot of your products seem to have like a deeper reason why you found that and came to that conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that I've been saying a lot lately, and we're going to use some of this, on some of the labels, is I've kind of always felt like if something could be done and it felt like the right thing to do, then it had to be done. Like it wasn't an option. It had to be done. And if nobody was going to do it, then it was my responsibility to do it and figure out a way to make this work. And from day one, I have felt that way. And I still very much feel that way with every single thing that we're doing moving forward. I understand the industry a lot more. I understand business a lot more. I mean, it's been 10 years. I fully appreciate the nuances in how all these other companies do their thing, find their niche, find their customer base. I have a greater understanding and appreciation for traditional marketing stuff, where before I was like, fuck, no, we're the zero marketing company. And I kind of get it now, and I don't think as negatively about it, but I think that there's always been this kind of balance between doing what everybody, doing what is the thing that you should be doing, business wise, and doing what feels genuine and pure. As cliche as it always sounds, like doing this thing because you love it, because you believe in it. And I think we've done a hell of a job kind of figuring out where that line is between the two. Yeah. So
you talked about off the beginning, like having a one product that you could take all of those things in one scoop. The first one that comes to mind is Nutrigen for me, but where did you start with Morphogen?
Yeah. So we started with Alphagen, and that's kind of where the name came from. And so when we came up with the company name, I wanted it obviously to mean something. I didn't want, Ohio Labs or, whatever, right? So Morpho and Gen literally means create change. It means directing cells to undergo a very specific reaction for a very specific end result. It means progression. It means evolution. And kind of as a play off that, the original idea was to have everything be a gen-based word. So alpha for us was the first for us. It was what I considered to be a leader in that product category. It was something that would lead the way of our brand moving forward. So Alphagen literally means creating this leadership, this leader for us moving forward. Obviously Alphagen wasn't meant to be cover every goal you could ever have in one scoop. It was, what could this pre-workout be and what could go in it to cover all those needs.
Oh, wow. Okay, this helps out. Mike's showing this is the current.
Yep.
This is the 10 gram of tyrosine. So this is now the new version of what the reason we're kind of coming together is this rebrand here for everyone that's watching. And if you're listening right now, you should check out the video because we're looking at the supplement facts panel. So Alphagen originally, it was the original product, and this is the full rebrand that's coming out now, which it is important to bring us back into the present. Thanks, Mike. So I guess maybe fast forwarding now, what was the thought process when you get to redo this? Was this the first time you got to redo Alphagen, or has that happened before?
No, so we've probably had, I mean, honestly, probably like 6 or 7 iterations from day one. Some of that was new ingredients coming into the mix in the industry. Some of it was, banned stuff. We had DMAA in the very first Alphagen. Everybody did. Then that obviously went away. And then, as well, how do we circumnavigate this situation and come up with something else? Now we've had a number of different versions. As we've gone, each new version still maintained a heavy presence and influence from the previous version with, some of these nuances that are very specific to the new version. So like this one, at the core of it, half of it's nearly the same. The other half is what I felt that it kind of needed to be. And Ben, you and I talked a year ago in person about kind of, this direction that things could go in the industry, and how, there was a lot of these trends with formulas that looked the same and similar ideas as to what they meant. And you and I were like, what if this product just totally did something different? And what if it was so different, not for the sake of being different, but for the sake of challenging the norm of the present time to create something potentially so good that it changes the direction of this entire product category? And I had ideas like this with a lot of products for a long time, because to be honest with you, I'm a little bored with the industry. There's so much going on, and there's definitely been a positive shift in quality, in brands taking things seriously, and owners representing their brands. I think it's a very exciting time, but at the same time, I'm tired of seeing formulas that look the same from every company to every company, and everybody and here's the thing. When you have research suggested dosing on any number of products, of course, you're going to have a lot of very similar formulas with very similar doses, at least at the core of that. I totally get it. But then I'm looking at, where are some outliers in this evidence? Where are some outliers in potential experience that may not be supported by research? And, could these things be pushed a little bit? Could it be pushed not just in terms of dose, but maybe in terms of totality of the formula, in terms of the number of ingredients, in terms of, shit. I mean, when we came out with Morphoprime at 6 caps, at the time it was 5 caps, and everybody lost their mind. Nobody's ever going to take that. Everybody told me no one's going to take 6 capsules. Nobody. I said, you're wrong. Our customers will, because they don't care. They might not take them all in the same handful, but they're going to take them because they understand the benefit of this product more than the inconvenience of taking 6 caps. Now you have companies making 6 to 12 cap serving size of a ton of products, and it's starting to become more commonplace because the shift in the industry is better. It's better education. It's a more informed consumer. But that took, and I'm not saying I'm the first one. I was certainly one of the first ones to make like a 6 capsule product 5 years ago. And at the time, those of us who did it, everybody's like, well, that's nobody who's going to take, that's so stupid. Nobody needs that many capsules. Well, we were right.
Awesome. So our audio feeds are growing. So I do want to rip through this panel real quick on this pre-workout. 20 servings per container, 1 scoop, 22.5 grams, 10 grams of L-tyrosine. We're going to have to talk about that. 8 grams of 2-to-1 citrulline malate, 750 milligrams of velvet bean extract mucunipurines, standardized for 98% L-dopa, 600 milligrams of alpha GPC, 50%, 500 milligrams of Avantra Z bitter orange extract, standardized for 10% synephrine. So that's 50 milligrams of synephrine. I'm going to want to ask about that as well. The key thing for a lot of people, 400 milligrams of caffeine and hydrous. So for a lot of people, it's immediately going to be kind of start at a half scoop here. And then 300 milligrams of N-phenethyl dimethylamine citrate, 200 milligrams of 99% theobromine, 100 milligrams of L-theanine to bring it down a little bit, and a 300 microgram dose of huperzine A. So I'm not sure if Ben Kane had any other things to talk about. I want to dive right into this 10 grams of L-tyrosine thing, because I have my experiences on a high dose L-tyrosine. I went to 5 grams, and it can be noticeably felt, but no one ever talks about this kind of thing. Like we see 2, maybe 2.5 grams, and that's like big deal. And also getting back to your thing of getting bored with everything, Ben and I always joke about like writing the same blog post, doing the same video, citrulline and beta alanine and caffeine together in a pre-workout. So like we get that because we've written that article 1,000 times literally. And so thank you for doing something different. But yeah, what's up with the tyrosine?
So the tyrosine. So I've used bigger doses of tyrosine quite a bit in the past for any number of reasons. Buying bulk tyrosine, I remember back when I was still actively competing a number of years ago, I was having 5 grams first thing in the morning for my cardio with a nice little stack of other stuff. Part of that was the motivating, energizing effect of that dose going into cardio, but the other part of that was to help with any potential thyroid upregulation during periods of dieting. And I was like, it feels good. I mean, this isn't like DMAA. This feels nice, but it's also safe. It's well studied into doses higher than 10 grams. I mean, a lot of that's based on, milligrams per kilo of body weight sort of research. And when you're looking kind of like the broad range of that, you're looking at somewhere in the 7 to 13 gram range, not just for the cognitive and the sort of the energizing effect benefits, but for anti-stress, especially around exercise. So that was always highly intriguing to me. And then taking that into consideration, obviously that drives the cost of that raw material way up, and it removes that much extra space from a scoop. So it makes sense that if somebody's going to do something and they want to put, 2 to 3 grams of beta-alanine and 2 to 3 grams of betaine and 1 gram of taurine and 1 gram of something else and 1 gram of something else, it makes sense that they can't put a 10-gram dose of tyrosine in there. It's kind of a waste of space if the remainder of the formula isn't a knockout as well. And so we wanted to get away from sort of the loading based, the creatine, the beta-alanines that, when we developed Alphagen and put those in there years ago, everybody was doing that as sort of a like, here's part of your, weekly intake of creatine and beta-alanine. There might be some negligible acute benefits leading into training, but ultimately this is a loading sort of product. And I'm like, eventually these got to come out and we got to be able to put more stuff in here. And thankfully there has been a shift in industry, which Ben, that's something you and I talked about, was having daily use sort of loading products, whether it's a commodity or a standalone, something like a Ghost Size or, one of Jeff Long's products, where it has a lot of that stuff in there. It could be a pre-workout, it could be a daily thing. And I really like the concept of that. So a big first step for us was getting those out of there and bumping that tyrosine dose up. It's funny when the news first dropped on that, because everybody lost their fucking minds. And overall, the reaction to that was pretty cool, but there were a lot of people that either said, well, diminishing returns, what's the point? Well, you haven't tried it yet. There is a point. And the other part was some people had some general concerns about either safety or, its effects when combined with L-Dopa, because there is some inhibiting, absorption issues that have been shown in, some medical literature, when you're looking at like half a gram of tyrosine and a little bit of, L-Dopa combined. But the thing with any sort of like competing interests in ingredients, you see that with everything. You see that with vitamins and minerals and amino acids and everything. And it's not like it's not like an all or nothing situation. So if they're going to inhibit each other a tiny bit, but you can override that by stacking that dose, it's going to feel better. I mean, it's going to work. At least that was kind of the way that I always believed that it would work. And we, of course, put, extensive amount of in-house testing. We had samples that we sent out to a ton of people. We're like, how does this feel? Do you feel like shit or do you feel good? And from a safety standpoint, I mean, the safety data on tyrosine is really vast. That to me is not a concern. And because it's in a pre-workout, people hypothetically shouldn't be taking pre-workouts 7 days in a row. So even if it's like like the Huperzine A or, L-Dopa, you probably shouldn't take those at full dose every single day, 7 days in a row, every day of the year. But this is a pre-workout. Everybody goes to the gym 3 to 5 days a week for the most part. So,
yeah, I've always been it's so funny, like with the usage per month thing. I've always thought it's funny that people like consider it being used 7 days a week, because like if you are training 7 days a week, like you're probably not a very good athlete to start. Like 5 days a week is for most very beneficial situations. That's where you see the top end of that. I really wanted to do the tyrosine L-Dopa talk, so I'm glad you got into that. The other one that we've ironically had some discussions about, which I think is so overplayed, and I wish it would stop, but the citrulline malate discussion, which I thought was kind of interesting.
We talked about that the other day. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to make sure we talk about it on the podcast, because I want everyone to hear this.
Okay. So L-citrulline is the star. We all know. I'm not stupid. We know this. I don't care if they're chemically bonded or not, because it doesn't matter. They're going to dissociate as soon as they hit stomach acid anyways. It doesn't matter. If I could put in 8 grams of a 2-1 Sitmal and get somewhere between 5 and 6 grams of citrulline, or I can put 5 or 6 grams of citrulline and the cost is nearly identical, that one's going to be better, not just because, and everybody's, talking about, the malic acid portion being a flavoring agent, and it certainly is and is often used, but there is evidence showing that it does have performance benefits. Now, is it as extensive as a creatine or a citrulline? Of course not. But if the cost is the same and it's already being put in there as a flavoring agent, and it does confer some additional performance benefits, then to me, it's a no-brainer for a product like this. Now, something like Volugen, we have pure L-citrulline in there, and that one was to be more of a standout citrulline dominant product, specifically for the blood flow benefits. So it's like there wasn't room for that in there. So people go, well, that's dumb. You should just use L-citrulline. Well, at the end of the day, it's the same amount of citrulline coming in, and you might get something that's better and it doesn't cost any more for anybody.
I thought
Yeah,
that was
I
such a
agree.
funny. Sorry.
Who
Go ahead.
cares?
Well, and the other ingredients area of this label shows just citric acid. Normally it would have said citric acid and malic acid anyway. So,
Yes.
you know, do you want to set it as an active ingredient or not? It makes the label look cooler. And I agree, it does. It will provide some benefits, and either way, it's going to be in there anyway. And yeah, it is a quasi-active ingredient. But
Yeah,
I
well,
fully
and-
agree with that. If as long as you say what you just said,
Yeah.
I'm fully on board with this, because you're not claiming it to be as good as creatine or anything like
No.
that. But there is definitely a metabolic purpose to having malic acid around. I mean,
Well,
so-
and like you said, like there's citric acid down on the label. If we didn't put cit-mal in there, I don't know if we would have put malic acid in there as a tartning agent. It probably would have been fine with just a teeny bit more citric acid. And actually, when we were doing the flavoring, we actually went between two versions, one with L-cit and one with cit-mal, and we were trying to flavor them, just toggling the amount of citric acid involved. And when we were able to nail it with the one, I was like, they're both equal, but this one's never going to have the malic acid in it, and this is the winner. And I mean, it was like a negligible price difference. I mean, we're talking like cents per SKU. And for me, since we're not a major distribution brand, I don't care about 10 cents a SKU. I don't. So
cool.
So just to while we're on that topic, because I want to come back to Morphicom before the end of the podcast, because that's definitely part of this whole rebrand, and we got to talk about the brand itself as well. But your distribution model, you've mentioned a few times, you guys do no wholesale at all. It's all direct to consumer, correct?
Yeah. So right now it is. So we've dabbled a little bit with some wholesale over the course of 10 years. The goal was to never do that. And then in the early days, there was some pull from some local, brick and mortar type places that, hey, everybody keeps asking about this stuff. And we're like, yeah, sweet. This extra money, except it's not, because it's extra money when you have all the inventory you could ever want, and you have the ability for that distribution channel to become vast, and it doesn't take up all your time and energy and resources. And for us, it was like low-hanging fruit that's robbing us from picking, the better fruit at the top of the tree. And we realized very quickly, we're like, this is hurting ultimately what we're trying to do. We can't buy larger runs of product. We can't buy the next SKU. We're not bringing enough money back quick enough. And because the cost of our goods is inherently higher to produce anyways, because it just is, we're making stuff with more stuff in it. It was very difficult to sell it to a brick and mortar at any cost that anybody could ever make any money on. And they didn't have the, sort of the motivation to push those products to their consumers because their margin was lower. So yes, they had them, but they weren't moving it. And then we weren't making any money, and it was just a shit situation. We've done the same thing in the last 2 years. We've dabbled back and forth with some international distribution stuff. We had some big stuff in the works and kind of moving, and then COVID shut everything down, and then laws changed in some of these other countries, and it just became such a disaster, a logistical nightmare on top of us then deciding to go for a rebrand and focus on this, that it was like, that needs to go too. We just can't do it.
That's awesome. So it keeps coming back to like the earnest being on you guys, and the marketing margins and especially like the margin that you have to cost for wholesale. That's a whole job in itself, which if it's taking you away from all these other spots, it's really costing you more money than it's making you. So it seems like Morphogen will always work as a direct to consumer model. That just seems like where you guys are called to.
Yeah, well, and it's super interesting because at the time, that was 10 years ago, almost nobody did that. I mean, every company had the option to purchase from their site, but the prices were outrageously high as MSRP, and then every retailer had it for $20 less. Well, who's buying it from the parent company for $20 more just because it's on their site? Nobody.
Right.
And again, the first probably 5 years that we existed, every major decision that we made, everybody that I know in the industry that owns other companies or owns stores or works somewhere, in distribution, man, you're doing that wrong. Okay. Fuck me, right? I guess I'm doing it wrong. But I always, again, the purity of it, but I also always believe that there had to have been a fraction of a percentage of this industry, of the consumers in this industry, who wanted something different. And it's like, well, let's give it to them. I don't need to reach everybody. I mean, this is a vastly growing multi-billion-dollar industry that's not getting any smaller anytime soon. I always believe that there was room for people that were doing something special. And we took a gamble, but we also grew at a at a nice pace. We also like both didn't quit our jobs. My wife basically, she was my sugar mama for 7 years while I took zero money from the company and just funneled it back in every year in hopes of it actualizing this vision that I had the whole time.
I think one of the biggest things that I think I've noted this to you before is when I've run into people in public or through fitness or whatever that were Morphogen fans, they always noted the quality of the character of the people behind the brand, which seemed, I don't know, I'd always want to ask Mike like what his thoughts are. Like when we talk about brands with people, we very rarely hear that portion of the brand, and it's. I already knew you, so I knew this, but it seems exemplary. That like the character of the people, the thought process behind it. Obviously, yes, like I've heard Thermogen makes me sweat like crazy. Alphagen's awesome because it gives me focus. You hear all these things, but they always noted at the end of there that there were good people behind it. Whether it's Deirdre or yourself or just the general feel of it. It seems like that's always part of it, and the decisions that you make with the brand. You're very transparent about it. You like everyone knows almost like the business of Morphogen, which is it's kind of cool. It's almost like a case study.
Yeah, well, because I've never considered myself. I mean, up until recently, to be like the owner of this thing. I've always considered myself first and foremost to be a consumer of goods in this industry. I still buy some stuff from several other brands because I'm curious, just like everybody else. I want to try that formula. I want to try that flavor. The label looks cool. I want to see what it looks like in person. I want to feel it. Like I'm still doing that. So every decision that I've made in terms of the, what gets delivered to the consumer has been based on if I'm buying from myself, what do I want? Well, if I live in the United States and I get hit with a $12 shipping charge during checkout, I'm super upset. Fuck it. We're taking that away. Gone. If I live in Ohio and I get hit with that plus another $2 to $3 in, state sales tax, I get upset. I'm like, well, I wasn't counting on any of this. Gone. So we literally just like, fuck it. We're losing money, but to me, this feels wrong. And so I'm just not going to do it. And thankfully I made decisions that not just propelled the brand forward, but didn't completely fuck us from a business perspective, where a lot of times they probably could have. I mean, there were a number of times that I made decisions purely with heart and not with any sort of like business logic, and almost totally screwed us. I mean, in a bad way. And I realized very quickly that there, as much as I'm a boundary pusher and a progressive sort of mind, there's only so far you can go before you don't exist in the construct of this industry anymore. I mean, there has to be some boundaries. Otherwise, there is no framework for anything to exist. And so I've gotten a lot better at mitigating some of my own, propensity to continually do things in a certain way. And certainly having my wife and our staff and everybody to kind of, bounce some of that around a little bit has helped tremendously.
It is kind of funny how you say that though, because everyone wants to be bigger than sports supplements, because sports supplements is a boundary in itself, right? Like we Mike and I often call ourselves like the redheaded stepchild of the pharmaceutical industry, because we're governed by a lot of the same laws, but we do a lot of stupid stuff too, but so you want to be outside of that because you want to be introduced to more intelligent beings or people that don't think as in bodybuilding and stuff, but you have to be within that construct still in certain ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much that I can go up in product cost to me. I can't make a product that costs $40 and still sell it for the same price that we're selling it for. I just can't do that. And I'm not going to make a product that sells for $200 as this like ultra rich person premium product that costs $100 to make. I'm not going to do that because yes, that could be done, but that is going to be so far removed even from the distance that I've set myself away from the traditional part of the industry that like you can't, that's not a business anymore. It's a hobby. And yeah, that's cool if you want to do that, ad hoc and play with it, but that'll never pay your mortgage, and that'll never take care of our staff, and that'll never able, to fund the growth of the brand itself. So.
Well, I want to get back to Morphicom, because that's the other product that's launching tomorrow, or this will be the same day as the launch of the product. But Alphagen and Morphicom are both launching. Mike, do you have Morphicom up on your computer to share to the screen?
I'm just pulling it up.
It's kind of I'd love to know why you picked these two.
Yeah, notify when available. So it's not available yet, right? Actually says $0.00. Sign me
Yes, that's because I don't want anybody to know what the price is going to be until we
Ah.
rebrand tomorrow.
up. I see.
And
Okay.
honestly, I wanted to make those 2 pages completely invisible until tomorrow, but we already had a ton of people signed up for product drop updates, and so I couldn't just recreate them as like new product SKUs, and I couldn't take these off and limit anybody else from signing up for updates. I was like, all right, fuck it, let's just build the pages out and just take all the important information off for now.
Makes sense. It makes sense. So
Oh, nice. Okay. Right off the bat, large dose phosphatidylserine. This ain't gonna be cheap. At least from what I understand.
No.
Okay, for 600 milligrams of 50% phosphatidylserine or PS. This is in a 3 capsule serving, 30 servings per container, 300 milligrams Korean red ginseng extract, 7% ginsenosides, 300 milligrams of L-theanine. Awesome. I didn't realize this. 200 milligrams of Rodeo Prime 6X rhodiola, 120 milligrams, which is the clinical dose of Shodan ashwagandha. That's 35% with analides. 50 milligrams of Kana, which is standardized at 0.5% alkaloids. And then 5 milligrams of lithium coming from 130 milligrams of lithium orotate. Interesting. This is going to do exactly what it says it's going to do, but you got a little bit of that rhodiola in there too. This is going to be a very interesting experience. Wow.
Yes. So part of what I wanted to do with the rebrand was not just this forward-facing aesthetic change to the company. A lot of what I wanted to do was fix things to me that seemed like imperfections in the line. And I'm the hardest critic of everything that we come out with. And over the last 5 years, I came out with a lot of products. I mean, a lot of products, and some of them I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to come out with this product, so I'm going to put that ingredient in this product. And then when we came out with this product, I was like, in my mind, I'm going, that one ingredient really should go over here. But how do I do that? And so this is my chance to kind of really maximize the specific application of each product, where we used to have some estrogen management ingredients in this product. And at the time that I created this, it was really designed to be sort of a used by competitors in the last 4 to 8 weeks of prep to mitigate, cortisol and estrogen related water retention or body fat issues or mood issues or any of that kind of stuff. And it became so much more than that, that the value of having it be such a dedicated stress and anxiety product, and then moving the estrogen management stuff to a more specific estrogen management, women's health, women's libido sort of product, had to happen. But we weren't going to do it until the rebrand was, kind of the way to take this overhaul of things. So in doing that, we were able to just hammer down this formula for Calm in such a perfect way. And all the initial feedback that we've gotten from people has been unbelievable. And this is by far our best-selling product. And I think we just destroyed the old one.
I have to ask, why Alphagen and Morphicom though? Because it's an interesting. I mean, obviously your pre-workout, it makes sense for your first launch, but Morphicom, is this a big seller for you? And that was the thought process.
If this is
our top seller,
if this is your top seller, what are you thinking in terms of redoing the formula? Like, obviously that's a huge risk. Why? How did this even begin? Okay, I think you already answered that actually.
Forward progress.
Elements, but right.
Because that's me. I'm a forward progress guy. Now,
Awesome.
Here's the thing: some of our products in the rebrand are not going to change. Some of them I released in more recent history, and I feel really looking at them, especially with what they cost, I'm like, there's no way that we can feasibly change this and make it not just better, but like we can't afford to add anything else to this, because I pushed that one a little bit too much. Something like adaptogen, we're not going to change that. That already costs a lot and it's perfect. But some of these other ones, I'm like, I know that I can do this. I'm a big conceptual thinker. I always often describe my thought processes as like this big, complex, three-dimensional puzzle that's shifting around all the time. I'm not a bullet point guy. My wife, the accountant, she's lists and check boxes and order and structure it. I'm just not that person. And so when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at so many different factors: what we've done, what could be done, what I want to do, what stuff costs, what ingredients might go with other things. And to me, it's just like, and it's just, this one just felt like it was going in the right direction. There's no better way for me to describe that. And just honestly, like an intuitive, just, it felt like it was right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how's the cadence going to work for this? You have these two dropping on Friday, but we've talked privately, and I don't post any of that, but like I don't think you publicly mentioned the follow through on that of what's coming as well.
Sure haven't.
Okay.
So the entire world sucks right now. And
Hey,
Far be it
have,
for me
have
to-
hope.
far be it for
Don't
me to
black
make
pill
me
this
any,
podcast. We're staying white pilled right now.
yeah, glimmers of hope. We have a ton of stuff in the works, a ton. We've already reformulated more than half of our line. Most of that has already been put into the production schedule. Those production schedules are substantially longer than they used to be. And part of that for us is it's not a matter of just like buying product. We have to turn over old inventory from the current stuff. I can't just leave, thousands of bottles of something sitting on the shelf and then buy the new one. And these are just a wash. I can't do that. And so for us, it's a matter of how does everything get timed out? We also couldn't replace the entire line all in the same day. That's literally an impossibility with a rebrand unless you have tens of millions of reserve dollars for inventory, which I do not. So that was an impossibility. The biggest reason that we did these first two was it was originally supposed to be just Alphagen, and it was originally supposed to be one flavor of Alphagen. And as we got further along the production schedule and the development process of things, I knew that we were going to run out of Calm, and I knew that this would also be a big hit outside of a performance-based category. Not everybody wants a pre-workout, and not everybody wants a health and wellness sort of product. But man, what if we just took these top two that we sell and we just launched them in full at the same time? And then after a couple of weeks, everything else will slowly start trickling in. And the whole rebrand is probably going to take 6 months to turn the whole line over. One at a time, two at a time, whatever. Who the fuck knows? There could be 10 products show up next week, or there could be one shows up in a month and one's the next month and one's the next month. I have absolutely no control over any of this. But we've been working. And so stuff is in the works. Yeah.
Yeah. For the consumers listening, that's basically how it is at the manufacturing thing. Like all of a sudden line time might open up, be ready. So it's impossible to predict anything. And so what Ben's saying is like completely the truth. So it seems like you're a well-prepared person, but just be ready because that line time might open up.
I mean, thankfully we have a great team. Deidre's fantastic. The rest of our staff has really stepped up with their respective roles, make it so that I can steer this ship forward, but I don't have to worry as much about so many of those logistical details, especially inventory management and cash flow and customer service and all of this kind of stuff. So those problems I've been involved with, and I'm helping make executive decisions, but I'm not the one like doing all the work. So hooray for me getting out of that, because I don't like doing that stuff anyways. But yeah, so that's kind of the rationale between those two products. Like I said, originally I wanted it to be Alphagen by itself as one flavor, and then I was like, well, then we're going to have one flavor, and if somebody doesn't like it, they're going to be pissed. So let's just do the three that we did, give some people some variety. So that's just what we did. And so the one of Alphagen that I wanted to drop was the remix. It was the watermelon grape candy. And the reason I wanted to do that is because we celebrated our 10-year anniversary in the fall. And that was when we were really like getting to the point on the rebrand of like taking action, measurable action to create stuff that's going to be released right now. And that particular flavor came about because our first SKU was watermelon candy Alphagen. And then 6 months later, when we turned that over, we bought more of that. And then we bought what we call juicy grape. And juicy grape was very much like a Kool-Aid grape or a Bubblicious grape sort of vibe to it. And both of those were really good. And they were really good for a while. And then you just got sick of drinking the same two things forever. And we barely had any, and we eventually came out with some new products, but it was just like, okay, if I'm getting sick of this, then everybody's getting sick of this. And so we got rid of them, but I always missed them. And I remember back when we had both, I would every now and then would do like a half scoop of each. And to me, it had this very similar vibe to what my brother and I did growing up, was take a piece of Bubblicious and a piece of Bubblicious, watermelon and grape, and throw them both in our mouth. We did that all the time. And so I did that with the Alphagen, and I was like, man, when we come out with a new one, we should mix these together as like a remix of the old stuff. And I was like, man, we should call it Remix. That's what we're going to do. And then that idea just kind of took off and, propagated the rest of the brand.
Love it.
That's really cool. I love that reasoning behind that. I have to remember that. So all things together, I think that one of the big questions I have is like you're you're the brand without marketing, but you've come out with quite compelling, interesting, different labels. Mike hasn't gotten to really see them in person yet, but they have raised edges, they have some foil, they've got different stuff going on with them, which is, I don't want to say anti-Morphogen, but like traditionally you would have never done that stuff, and that's obviously invested money into that, right?
Yeah. So the thing with me is, and the marketing thing is, when I've always looked at marketing, I've looked at it as a way to deceive a consumer. In the past, I don't have the same exact mindset now, but that's how I kind of always looked at it. And so for me, anything that felt like it wasn't genuine to who I am, and if it felt like I was trying to trick somebody, then it felt wrong. These labels to me don't feel like either one of those. They feel very much like who I think that we are now and aren't adequately represented by our current labels, and who I absolutely plan on being and think that we will be in the next 3 to 5 years. So it was a chance to really kind of change all that. And yes, it helps with marketing, but the other side of me, so everybody thinks about this science background that I have and all this, formulas and dosing and research and all this, but I grew up basically like an art savant. And I wasn't a science guy until college. And so everybody expected me to go off and be some artist or an architect or a graphic designer or something. And those started to shift into much more computer work, and I just didn't want to do any of that. And so for me, this company and everything that we do is this perfect combination between my artistic mind and my science mind. And so the aesthetics of what the product looks like and represents, to me, is as important as the rest. At least now it is. But the biggest thing is, in the past, was I never wanted those aesthetics to feel like they were conveying a false message compared to what you were getting in the product. And I think there are a lot of brands that still do that their labels are awesome and their websites are awesome and their clothing is awesome and their formulas are garbage. And that bothers me. That bothers me. And I just never wanted to be that. Especially in the past, when our labels have gotten better progressively over time, it was never like a huge focal point because we didn't have any money to do anything cool. And the focal point was like, how do I make product? I'm new to this game. How do I do this? Now that I know what I'm doing, now it's like, all right, now how can we fully represent who we are on the front end?
Yeah, I love that. I think it's kind of become an unfortunate stereotype, is that if the labels are cool, the product probably isn't that great. But I understand where the thought process came from,
Yeah.
But
and so much of our current look still echoes back to where we were. I mentioned earlier that formulas still have sort of the backbone of the previous version. And I wanted that to still be recognizable in our labels, where we still have most of the white that we have now. The product word in the front is the same font, stylized the same way. It's very recognizable. We've used that over the last several iterations of the label over the last 8 years. But I knew that the rest of it could be changed and it would still look like us. It would still feel like us.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, because the feel of the product, it's still the same, but it's like premium.
And that's, people always said, man, your products are premium and your products are like an A+, and your labels are like a B+, and your website's like a C+, and your renders are like a C-. And, it's like, okay, we're getting there. We're figuring this out. And now that I think we've figured a lot of this out, now it's a chance for every single aspect of this to represent the brand by itself. And then collectively, there's no chinks in that armor, so to speak.
Yeah. I thought a big one was the flavor too. I feel like your flavors have really improved, at least on the Alphagen side. It's all I've had so far. But if I guess previously I was always mixing Alphagen with Volugen, and Volugen can be a little gritty. So I don't know if I always had the best experience.
Yeah,
with that.
and we knew that. We were well aware that for the most part it wasn't an issue, but the new Volugen is probably going to be probably realistically another 10 to 12 weeks if I had to guess. The new Volugen formula is unbelievably good, but the flavors I think are actually better than the Alphagen flavors.
Well, something to look forward to.
Which is saying a lot compared to what the Volugen ones used to be. So we are going to release the same identical 3 flavors. That way they're not just like complementary flavors, but they are identical flavors. They're obviously going to taste a little different because of the inherent differences in the raw materials, but the Volugen flavors I think are even better. And when they're mixed together, it's, exponentially better than anything we've ever done.
You almost slipped up and gave us an ingredient on the Volugen. I saw that.
Almost did what?
Yeah, you were like, because of the, and
Because
almost
of
gave us an So, all right. Well, I feel like we've caught up really well with Morphogen. I mean, what else is there to like? What should we be looking forward to? I feel like there's going to be more campaigns alongside a lot of your launches and stuff. And
Yeah,
like,
so part of what we have planned for this year is obviously most of the focus is on the logistics of this rebrand. We still have a lot of products to release. We still have a lot of labels to create and to purchase. We still have supply chain issues to manage. We still have inventory that we're, still kind of figuring out exactly how to maximize that. The next piece that we're doing is we're going to be taking a deep dive into actual business practices and reducing the number of SKUs, getting rid of, shaking off the dead bark, getting rid of the stuff that doesn't sell well, that is sunk cost, that is limiting our growth as a company. Some of this is going to be actually marketing, and maybe not like, cool movies on Instagram, on an Instagram ad, but eventually, we're going to have to do something with retargeting or SEO or Google Analytics or Facebook Pixel or any of these things that we have literally never done. Or email or SMS. I mean, outside of your confirmation email, we've never sent an email in 10 years, not a single email to our customers. That's an untapped resource that seems, oh my God, why didn't you do this? Well, to be honest with you, part of it was apathy and part of it was necessity. Part of it was I really didn't care. And the other part was we kind of didn't need to. We were scaling at a very nice pace. If we had scaled any faster, we probably would have been screwed along the way in many instances. And but now it's time that we can actually start to do some of that stuff that is, marketing, but it's not gimmicky trickster marketing. It's brand awareness. One of my best friends, who's a very successful entrepreneur in the fitness space, he and I have gone back and forth on this over the last couple of years, and he sat me down a little bit ago and he goes, "Do you really believe that what you're doing is the right thing?" I said, "Absolutely. Absolutely." He goes, "Do you really believe that your stuff is the best or is one of the best?" I said, "Absolutely." And he goes, "And do you genuinely believe that you are meant to get this into people's hands to change their results, to change their life, to change their perception of what they can receive from this industry?" I said, "Absolutely." He goes, "Then you owe it to yourself to get out of your own fucking way and market to the people that don't know who you are and don't know what your brand is about." And I was like, man, I can't argue against that. You're right. What do I do? So
yeah, Ben, we are insanely similar like that. I think guys like us, I don't like being on email lists. I don't like receiving text messages. I don't like notifications, but that doesn't mean that a lot of your demographic don't. They want to hear from you. They love you. They love your products, and they would love to get an email from you, even if they're getting a dozen other emails. And that's what you have to realize. Like some people, when they monitor a brand with PricePlow and there hasn't been an alert for a little while, and they get that alert, they reply to me personally, like, "Mike, what's up?" And so we have a couple of people who they love those notifications. So just because you and I don't like that,
I know.
we are the exception. We're not the rule. So
yeah,
that. Yeah.
Social media posts, like I'm still not great at regularly posting on social media. We've talked to some businessy people here and there, and they're like, "So what's your social media strategy?" I'm like, when I feel like posting something, I'm like, "Oh, we should probably post something." Let's post this. And they're like, "Well, like, what's the traffic like and what time of day?" I go, I have no idea. They go, "How much conversion are you getting from one post to the next?" I have no idea. I've never looked at that. They're like, "What do you mean you haven't looked at that?" I'm like, "I haven't looked at it. Should I be looking at that?" They're like, "Yes." I said, "Okay, well, when we need to, we will." So that's another thing we're going to be looking into this year. I will not be doing it.
Right. I was just going to say, it's definitely not going to be you doing it.
Yeah.
That doesn't work with the 3D puzzle, big picture conceptualized mind.
Nope, sure doesn't.
Obviously, there's
that,
there's people to be reached and to be optimized too, and you should feel no shame over that because your products aren't shit. So
yeah, well, and especially now that stuff on the website renders, some basic stuff, like we're leveling up across the board, and so now some of it is not just apathy towards doing it. Looking back at everything that we've done, there's certainly some shame wrapped up in me not ever feeling like certain elements of what we were doing was good enough to market, to promote.
Wow, that's a little profound too. Like putting yourself out there, it's gonna be a little harsh.
I mean, I'm well aware that our renders have gotten better over the years, but our renders were garbage like 3 years ago. Garbage. I'm well aware of that. Like, yes, it limited us, and yes, it misrepresented who we are. I'm not proud of that fact. The last thing I'm going to do is pay money for that render to end up in front of everybody's fucking face. Like, I hate it. I don't want anybody else to see it. So
I remember
that's how I felt so much.
I remember a year ago when we had that whole conversation. I remember you specifically saying that you don't do the leftover cart emails. Like, you know, if you add something to your cart and you go away, most websites will email like, hey, you forgot about this, make sure you check out. And I remember you being like, I don't want that fucking email in my email. And I feel
here,
exactly the same way. I hate that.
It works though. People like it.
Then we have put kind of the basic like 10-hour reminder that if something is there and you haven't bought it and it's still there in 10 hours, I'm pretty sure they get a message from somebody. I haven't checked this in a very long time, but especially if somebody does that and then they change their mind and they remove it and then they leave, like, okay, like,
so you're a maximizer. Like it goes right into the formulas and everything, but you're not an over optimizer. So you obviously need the person, and you have the people on your team that can help with the optimization, because you've taken the formulas to this maximal level where you're not going to, unless you make them like out of the price reach of your favorite consumers, you're not going to change these formulas too much more right now. So yeah,
Nope.
now it's time to do the optimization. And as long as people have an easy opt out, as long as they control F and hit, you know, whatever, find the unsubscribe or, you know, make it easy, then I think, yeah, absolutely no shame. You're ready.
yeah. And
Cool.
you know, we've scaled so much over the last few years by way of increasing the amount of stuff that people can buy, you know, the number of SKUs, and our average order value has gone up a little bit every year on a pretty consistent basis, but that's only going to go up so much. You know, our customers are not going to go from buying 3 things a month to buying 10 things a month just because we have 200 SKUs instead of 70 SKUs. They're not going to do it. And so it gets to a point that how much of that expansion is a waste and how much is it to fulfill my own curiosity and my own ego versus actually fulfilling the potential of the brand, which ultimately is the reason that we started it to begin with. So
I love that. I think you have definitely your own like hero story, and you're definitely trying to innovate and all, but there's definitely a lot of just stereotypical optimizations that could be very beneficial to Morphogen, as much as you might hate the way that they would make you feel. Most
Yes.
people would like them.
yes. It's so I'll say this because this isn't going to be live until after this has already happened. So our rebrand drop is happening tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly what time in the day we're going to drop like the official, like, you know, a video on Instagram or something big, but we're going to make those 2 products live on the site at 9 o'clock in the morning and not tell anybody. And that is going to go out to everybody that signed up for SMS alerts.
Cool.
With the
Nice.
message, hey, thanks for signing up. You get early access to this order. And I feel good about that.
Any
So
perks for them? Are they going to get like a shaker or anything along those lines?
they get to be the first ones that buy it.
Awesome.
Hopefully it sells out. I mean, yeah.
They
Yeah.
get to comment on this YouTube video and be like,
No, you know,
I was working.
maybe that's what I'll do. I mean, we have a fuck ton of shakers back there. Maybe I'll have my crew throw a shaker in all the orders from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. whenever I decide to drop the Instagram video. Maybe that's what we'll do. I like
Awesome.
I love that. That's really cool. Awesome. Well, I think that's a perfect way to close this out. It's been an awesome hour. Is there anything else you want to note or you want to talk about that's happened with Morphogen, or what to see coming?
Nope. I mean, you know, I'm excited to share what we've been working on. I'm excited to share my vision. I think people are going to go fucking nuts about so many other formulas that we're working on. I can't fucking wait.
Well, we're excited to see it. Ben, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been an awesome one. We got to do this more often for sure, instead of every 2 years. But we're really excited to see what you guys have coming.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Good luck with the launch.
Sharon, so yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate
So places to find at Morphogen_nutrition, right?
Yep. Morphogen_nutrition on Instagram. My new Instagram is Morphogen_Ben. My old one was Morphogen Ben, but I got locked out. Working on getting it back. Websites, mntakeover.com or morphogennutrition.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much.